Oh my
So
God.
yeah, why
Okay.
do I believe that being a VC, founder of a VC fund is easier than being a founder of a startup? There's so many reasons. I mean, the first I guess I'll ground myself on is product market fit. It turns out that when you run a venture capital fund, there's very established product market fit. My product is giving money to you as a founder, and it turns out that founders really like getting money from a VC, right? So every other startup that I ever ran, like I've had 5 companies. This is my 5th one right now. Like it took me like 3 to 5 years to find product market fit, and that was like with a lot of resources spent, time, money, to try to find something that finally took off. And it's just lots of experimentation. So the early days of being a startup founder, the quest is to see whether there is a path to product market fit, and many do not. I'd say arguably most do not find it, right?
Sure.
So you take away that stress. That's part one. Part two is that there's something a little bit different about having a portfolio of companies versus just one company. When you're a founder, all of your eggs are just in that single company. Like, it's toxic. Like, even your personal identity often feels tied to the success of this business. That's how I felt. That's never a healthy kind of thing. That's like going to be like a binary outcome usually for that founder. In a portfolio, when you're a VC, we have 500 portfolio companies across 3 funds. So it creates a little bit more of like an emotional balance when you're a VC, because you have like a portfolio of high-risk businesses, not just the one.
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, Acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is, you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is, you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing these crossroads, but too many times, the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here, or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on Acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list, and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. I'm your host, Sharath. Today I have an exciting guest who's also uber cool. I'll repeat that again. He's really cool guy. He recently said that he's not. No one said about it. I would go, file a case against him. But today I have Eric Bahn on the podcast. Welcome, Eric. How are you feeling? Thanks for taking time today.
Yeah, Sharath, feeling great because I get to have a conversation with you. Really honored to be on the pod with you. And I think we're going to cover some really good stuff. So excited.
Absolutely. I have so many questions for you. Technical, non-technical, shit posting. We can talk about. But For folks who doesn't know Eric, which is rare, let me give you guys a brief example. Eric's, like I said, super cool VC, uh, who always like finds ideas and intentions about helping founders. That's one thing I really observed about you, Eric, when I researched you. And I've been like a big fan, followed you for many years now.
Thank you.
He's the co-founder of Hustle Fund, a pre-seed VC fund with over like 130 million AUM, and his co-founder is none other than the amazing Elizabeth. And I'm a big fan of her as well. Briefly, when I was at Product Hunt, I kind of like helped host the team, with the session with her. He's a founder. He's a PM. Oh my God, he did so many things. He's a founder of a children's book company. I can go on and on about Eric, but let's get into it. I think everybody can get the intro from the short notes, but right off the bat, what's your obsession with minivans?
Oh, sorry. There's a bit of a delay there. I missed that question.
So I'll repeat. Yeah. So what's the obsession with the minivans, Eric?
Yeah. So this has become a bit of a what started as a small joke has now turned into a little bit more of a meme, which has now turned into a very closely associated branding for myself. So yeah, I drive a minivan. It's a Honda Odyssey. It's great. I got it once we had our first kid. And the thing that triggered, I think, the minivan jokes was, at least in the United States, there's this belief that minivans are super uncool, right?
Yeah.
So people think of soccer moms, soccer dads, people that live in the suburbs have kind of given up on life. But the reality is this, Sharath. If you drive a minivan, they're actually fantastic vehicles. They're huge. The doors slide out like this. They have so much utility. But in addition to that, too, I'm like, it's almost like for me, like something like of a reclaiming of my masculinity, because like people will sometimes toxically say like, oh, you're not a real man if you have a minivan. That is nonsensical, because you have to have made children in order to have filled up the minivan with those babies, right? So for me, it's like taking back the brand of that minivans are actually really fun and cool. And the thing that, again, makes me so happy to drive one is because I have this fantastic family. I get to drive around in it. So yeah, it's a weird joke that I have no idea when it's going to end. It's been like 5 years now since people have been sort of talking about minivans, and I'm just continue to feed the fire, I suppose.
Yeah, you shouldn't drop, in my opinion, as well. I think I love the reason behind it. I think it's not just a cool thing that you're doing because you can get into people's conversation about, everybody loves I wouldn't say controversy, but anything that is unfiltered or like like a hard opinion. But I think I like the reasoning behind it, because kind of want to go against the norm, the stigma, right? So generally it's like it's uphill battle, but of course, I have high trust in you for making it super cool. As a
Thank
dad
you.
myself, I'm expecting my our second kid
oh
next
my
year,
gosh,
March.
congratulations. Yeah, amazing.
So yeah, thank you, appreciate it. We are going to have like two boys. We have a hyper energetic toddler at our house. As a matter of fact, uh, when I was building my previous startup, Shoutout, my co-founder actually gifted me Hustle Funds 1Z. I couldn't find it. It was lost in the garage somewhere, but I still have it, which I think I tweeted about it like 2 years ago. But
I'm sure that we reposted it. We can't
yeah.
resist the cute baby wearing a Hustle Fun onesie. And congrats. I think actually, if you have a really energetic older older son, then he's gonna just have the perfect playmate for life, right? To push around, to play soccer with, whatever.
Absolutely. I joke with my wife. I'm an introvert, so God gifted me two boys as friends.
Well, you can keep
So
going
anyway,
to see what happens.
yeah.
Maybe
Oh,
there'll
no,
be
no,
a girl
no,
at
no,
some
no. Oh my
point.
God. My wife will kill me. Let's talk about like parents. I think you're one of those people on Twitter, X, whatever people call it these days, that kind of brings the balance out, right? Like your content is blend of, like you said, you're very proud of family, you're grateful about your family. You talked a lot about, like, how they help you become better. One of your tweets about, your kid, mentioning about an autistic kid,
Hmm.
that actually changed your perspective and thinking, and improved empathy. So a lot of your tweets are well balanced. It's not very technical about VC, or these are your hustle tips and whatnot, but it's also like you bring the human side of it. So talk to me about your family. One of the things that triggered to me is this post from Catherine. She's an amazing person, by the way. She, the founder of Anja Health. She was on
Mm.
my other
Oh yeah, of
podcast
course.
about
One of our founders. Yeah.
bonding with, yeah, so bonding with the kids. So my question is, like you said, it takes time with bonding with, kids. So talk to me about their presence, how they impact you on a day-to-day basis when you take big decisions like investing in startups.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, just starting from the very beginning on that, is I never thought I really wanted kids. So I was a little bit against having kids.
Oh.
I guess having a family was never like a real dream of mine when I was a young child. And then when I became an
Hmm.
adult, it was like it'd be kind of okay, I guess, but I'm not really that into it. There comes a point like in your 20s where you're starting to do better in your career and like you're making a little bit more money, and then the vacations start to get better, and then suddenly
Mm-hmm.
like everything feels much more affordable, like a slightly better meal and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
like quality of
Mm-hmm.
life is
Mm-hmm.
increasing, right? Why screw that
Mm-hmm.
up? But
Mm.
my wife really wanted kids, so that ended that conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really important for me. So uh we eventually started going for it. And then what I learned now, pretty quickly actually after the first one, was how amazing it is. I mean, I think I deeply underappreciated the basic thing that I get out of every day, like removing the spiritual qualities of children and all that stuff, and what it's like to make babies, all stuff. Like at the end of the day, like when I step back from my garage back into the house and my family's there, I used to have just one best friend in my house. Now I have three best friends. Right? Like
Mm.
the pee poo, lack
It's
of sleep,
awesome.
yeah, it's annoying. But like
Right.
it really is just majority of the time like having a great time with each other. It's just like the
Right.
best roommate situation I've ever had in my life. So
Right.
part one is just like that's so grounding. Just to
Mm.
know that like the home feels so safe and it feels more full than before.
Mm.
I think the second thing too is or they're constant kids are a constant reminder to you of what really matters in
Right.
this life. And they don't give a shit. They never ask about like how did it go
Yeah.
with that LP pitch or that podcast with Sharath. Like they're not going to
Right.
ask those questions. All they
Right.
want is your time and your
Sure.
presence, right?
Right.
Especially while they're younger.
Right.
And so like if I were not a VC and just working in any other job, or like I was
Mm-hmm.
struggling with my career, whatever it is, like they don't care. They
Mm.
just care about me. And
Right.
it's a nice daily reminder to have, which is just like
Mm-hmm.
the people that love you most, they're
Mm-hmm.
not judging you on whether you have a cool job or not, or how much money you make or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And adults tend to do that a little bit more, so
Yeah.
it's a nice contrast. I find a lot of safety in that.
Absolutely. Just to add your point, we are all programmed, in one way or the other.
Mm,
But kids, they come as blank, pretty. It's like white slates, right? They don't have anything. They don't know the negatives. They don't know how to scheme. They don't know how to hustle. They're this pure white slates. That's what I learned when I always wanted kids, but I never knew how impactful it would be when you hold a baby who beat the shit out of the odds of 400 trillion to 1.
mm,
That is phenomenal. So that is my reminder every day when I see him. It fascinates me that he, like you said, they don't care about anything. At the same time, they're just very pure. They're this forgiving souls that they just forgive, and just want to try to be, like, in the present, in that moment, right? So
yeah,
like you said,
yeah,
I think, yeah, not highlighting about the philosophical angle of, benefits of being kids, but it's just like startups, right? It is tough to build a startup, just like it is tough to wake up, in 2 hour intervals to feed an infant. Of course it's uncomfortable, but the beauty is in the long run. Like when you produce
yeah,
something so beautiful, it
yeah.
impacts, the fruits are in the future. So uh Absolutely, what you said about true. I love one of your hacks by your wife. More read time is equal to more iPad time. That's something I want to
Yeah.
implement as well. But any other hacks that you recently both found or implemented that are successful that you want to share?
Well, I don't know if this is really a hack, but something that we're doing differently in our household that I didn't have when I was a kid because I was frankly way more spoiled than my children are today, and they're pretty
Hmm.
damn spoiled. We are very early on trying to institute chores for them, right? Just this notion
Hmm.
that they actually, even at their young ages, can contribute something meaningful to the house. So they're
Sure.
doing more cleaning of the house,
Hmm. Interesting.
a little bit of the cooking, just the things that are kind of daily kind of muscle memory things that I want them to get into
Right.
the habit of doing, just like learning how to like take care of our home.
Right.
And yeah, like soon, like I can't wait for them to do all their laundry. I think for my son, he's ready to do it. He's 8 years old. And
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
just like these kinds of like small life skills. I remember like going to college and then like staring at a laundry machine for the first time in my dorm and just like kind of being super embarrassed of just like I have no fucking idea like how this thing
Oh
works.
man.
So and then just had
Right.
to slowly learn. But
Hmm.
just knowing that they can have something that contributes, I think is important. And then the other thing too is just what's important for me, at least as a parent, is also just quantity time and quality time. So I
Hmm.
really do think that the two really matter a lot. And some ways that
Hmm.
that manifests in my life is making sure that I'm very present from like Cub Scout activities, going to the soccer games, like never having
Hmm.
my phone on me, like for those kinds of
Hmm.
things. And then
Hmm.
also volunteering in my kids' school so that they can see their dad in the classroom every
Sure.
other week. And that's I don't really do much in that classroom other than just play with kids a bit, but
Right.
I know that's something that they're gonna remember, right? It was just like
Yeah.
dad tried to like solve for some
Right.
quantity time as well.
Right.
And I love my parents a lot. I love my dad. He was a surgeon and he worked a
Hmm.
lot. And I kind of wish I had more time with him. That's the one
Hmm.
thing that I wish were possible. But
Right.
he had to do what he had to do, and that's kind of how life shook out. But it taught me that I wanted a little bit more time with my kids. It just really
Yeah.
comes down to that. I'll just share this, which is like something I think been thinking about a lot, Sharath, which is there's this show on HBO I really like called The Righteous Gemstones. It's about this family, kind of like Succession like family.
Mm-hmm.
But the father started a mega church in the South, right? And then it's
Mm.
a little bit of a hilarious story in the sense that they're very like corrupt. So like they just like are ridiculously rich, right? Just like running this church. And then
Mm-hmm.
in this latest season, one of the uncles is like, your daddy gave you all of the riches in the world. He's talking to their spoiled
Mm.
kids. He's like, but he forgot to give you the most important gift, which is his time, right?
Mm.
Which is why those kids like end up being like such terrible people. So
Right.
even though that was a comedy and all that stuff, like I think about that actually a lot. It's a good reminder of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
There is
that's
there
what
is a
kids need.
meaning.
Totally,
I
yeah,
think
totally.
when you have like I think you seem to be a person uh with with a hunger to learn and seek some sort of lesson from everything, right? Like even from a comedy, you're seeking that lesson, which is very rare. People just consume and just leave it out. So
Ah,
you're digesting it and implementing in your own life in your own way. So that I would just want to like acknowledge that, because it's a skill. It's a skill that
well,
helps you
yeah, that's
become
kind
better.
of you to say. I think that I'm a lot less intentional about that. The thing that uh I think the thing that I'm learning as I get older is just how to
Hmm.
be present, right?
Yeah.
So like, and then when you're present, then like a lot of things are suddenly turn on, like your senses and everything. It's just listening becomes a little bit
Right.
different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I'm not trying to gain lessons off watching HBO. That's not my thing. But like, when something connects with me, I can sort of like sit with it more now.
Sure.
The older I get, than maybe when I was a
Right.
more impatient youth. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. So one of the things I also have to acknowledge, you dated your wife for 18 years, and it seems you're a long-term player. Everything you do, you have this long-term vision of doing things. Where did you develop that? Like with from your parents, or do you have any influence for that thinking?
Yeah. So clarifying, I'd been with my wife for 20 years, and then we've been married for 14. But yeah, of course we're still dating.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
20
yeah,
years of dating right there, and you know, um, in terms of just like the patience for long things, I mean, I think I was a much more impatient person before. In your 20s, and maybe Sharath, you experienced this too. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, we're trying to race towards. Is it like to be a millionaire as quickly as possible, to get all these like become like 30 under 30 or I don't know what it is, right? For whatever reason, and I see this with a lot of 20-year-olds even today. Like that, there's just this rush. You know, people want to just drop off out of college to just do their thing, and then you know, as I've been aging, I've been realizing like, what's the rush, right? Just like, you know, just enjoy the journey a little bit more. And also, you know, when it comes to things that compound, you know, compounding just like really starts to shape itself like towards the latter part of your career or your life, and in terms of the habits that you develop. I mean, there's like that famous statistic, I think I'm gonna botch it, that like Warren Buffett like made something like 90% of his wealth in like after 60 or something like that. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah.
that was a lot of sort of patient operating behind like a strategy that he had, and then like he made like gazillions of dollars very rapidly through exponential compounding. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of the long-term stuff, I don't know if it's like it's definitely not necessarily tied to like day-to-day patience, because I don't think I am that patient. But where I am kind of patient is just this notion of like, for relationships, the ones that matter most to me, my family, my friends, my co-founders whom I've known for 23 years as well, and any kind of founder relationships that we have. I know that it's a long time commitment. Like when I invest in a founder today, I just made a commitment right before this call. In fact, like that's gonna be a 7 to 10 year journey before that person can IPO. If everything goes right, we're gonna be growing old together, right? So, you know, in those kinds of relationships, I'd sort of dig in of just like let's assume that this is gonna be like a 10-year engagement together, and see what happens. So it's a little bit different when you're on this side of the table as a venture investor, because just things take time to mature and season before you see any kind of outcome.
I think by nature or by default, the nature of a VC should be, I'm placing a bet and it will, you know, come to life in, like you said, you know, 7 years, 10 years, probably, you know, even longer. I feel that relationship mentality is by default is inculcated. So follow-up question, in your opinion, what do you see that strengthens a relationship, be it with founders, be it with your colleagues, you know, be it with family? What is like that's something that really triggers you, you know what, I have to push myself to do even more?
I think it's just always trying to find ways to be more present. So there's some bad habits I've developed when I was younger as a founder, which is well, maybe this even started when I was a kid. So around 6th grade, I made a decision that I'm going to be a great student. I remember this because like I was kind of like a popular kid. I had like a couple of troublemaker friends, not big troublemakers. And, you know, I could start to see the world starting to diverge of just like, there's one path where like I can try to be a funny, popular kid in 6th grade. And then there's another path, which is just like, maybe there's something bigger than what I can see in front of me growing up in Michigan, like a bigger world out there. And I quickly connected the dots of just like, you know, if I can get into like a great college somewhere, it seems like there's like a very big adventure ahead that would also open up. And so I chose the path of just becoming like a really great student. And then like with a singular goal of just like, I got to get out of Michigan. I'm going to go to a great school. And then like, we'll see where life takes me after that point. And as a result, I became like very, very disciplined. You know, those are when I think I started to develop my habits around never procrastinating, just like pushing really, really hard when it comes to, at the time, academics. Where that started to translate for me in my founder career was I quickly noticed, actually, just as a young adult, that there's a quality that's missing in almost every single professional that I've seen. I'm talking about like 98% of the people I work with, which is fast response. You know, like if someone puts in a request, do they execute it? And then do they respond quickly? Execute well and then respond quickly. And there are just certain people that I'm sure you worked with, Sharath, which is like you send a note to them and then you have full confidence just going to be executed, and you just like, it leaves your mind. You're like, I have no worries about this thing. And then there's a lot of other people I'm sure you work with where you're like, I'm going to send them this request, but I know I need to like follow up with them to sort of like push them and push them and push them. I actually think that's more of the default. So in my first company, I would respond to every single message within 1 hour for 2 years. I was running a discussion forum at the time. This is my first company. So that basically meant that it was a 24-hour on-call. Like when America goes to sleep, Europe and Asia wakes up, and like and I did this, and then it sort of conditioned me on this idea of like, wow, people love this stuff when you respond quickly. Where it starts to get toxic is like I'm still obsessed with speed. So I'm inbox zero every day. I've been inbox zero every day for the past 10 years, I'd say.
Wow.
Like when it comes to like execution, like I rush real hard to make sure that I get all my deliverables done every day. That comes at a cost though. Like it trains me into like looking at my phone all the time, right? And I don't want an enduring memory for my kids to be like, yeah, dad was watching the movie in the living room with us, but he was actually working on his phone the whole time. That's probably a toxic habit I need to stop with in front of my kids. So still something I'm kind of working on, but like that's sort of like a different manifestation of my own impatience for myself. Even though I'm very long-term patient on other things in my life now.
That is very fascinating. I think that basically, like everything in life, anything in the universe, balance is what makes it right, in my opinion. Finding like a true balance, not to go at the end of spectrum, whichever it is, obsession or laziness, or not doing things.
Sure.
But I really like in a way, you're saying that everybody should have an urgency to do things faster in a faster way, but at balance. So urgency is something that can come from external pressure, or else you can pressure yourself to do it, certain things in certain point. So I like that fact. Also in a way that you're also saying that we all know that trust is the single most ingredient that actually helps build relationships, like in a better way. That trust element, when it comes to founders that you've invested in or you worked with before, what are some qualities that people fascinated you when it comes to trust? That these are some things that exhibited that actually, like you said in your words, made me again a student of learning from them.
Yeah. Well, I think consistency of follow-up is the thing that starts to show real trust with me. The very best founders I work with on a monthly, maybe on a quarterly basis, send updates like on the dot. And the quality of the updates is showing everything. It's like the good, the bad, where they need help, where they might be succeeding, whatever it is. It just feels like a fully vulnerable kind of like update. And what I find is just like that kind of consistency matters a lot. But of course, the nature of just vulnerability matters a lot to me too. I tend to find that those who are willing to become vulnerable are generally very high, like emotionally intelligent, and also quite self-aware, and also the best to coach, because I think with vulnerability, it kind of signals to me a little bit of growth mindset of just like, I am willing to adapt and learn, and this is just what I accept is like a necessary part of this job, right? And you got to have a growth mindset, I think, in order to make it to the very top of Silicon Valley. So yeah, those are sort of things that sort of demonstrate to me. It's just like that consistency of follow up on the dot, that vulnerability, and from there, I think it's a really good baseline to trust. But one thing that I also do to try to like start a trust driven relationship with our founders is when we offer cash to a founder and they accept it, I walk them through a social contract for how Hustle Fund engages with its founders to see whether they're down to work with us. And if you're open to it, Sharath, I'm happy to actually share what the social contract looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so let's
please.
pretend you just took money from us, right? So I'd say this is usually our first meeting right after the money's been wired. I say, yo, Sharath, thank you so much for saying yes to Hustle Fund. I'm really excited about this journey ahead. And the way that we operate with our founders is through a social contract that we set up that has 3 parts. So the first part is, I'm going to commit to blunt honesty and feedback to you, but please assume it's coming from a good place in my heart.
Mm.
Your time is really valuable. And I always want to make sure that we can just get right into the heart of what's going on and,
Mm-hmm.
have a very honest conversation about it. But of course, this is a reciprocal relationship. But assuming that's
Mm-hmm.
from a good place in our heart is important because we all want the same thing, which is for this company to be incredibly successful. So that's part one, is that blunt honesty and feedback, good place in the heart. Second part is whenever we speak, whenever we meet, Sharath, I'm going to assume that things are going badly. It's not to say that you're a bad founder or that the business is bad or anything else is necessarily bad, but even for like the best companies I've ever run, 95% of the time it felt like shit. I mean, like, there's always a house of cards that you're building where it could collapse at any moment. A key employee leaves, a key client is churning, something that feels existential all the time. There's always a big problem to be solved. So when we jump into the call, let's just get right into problem solving mode and figure out what the biggest blocker is that can help you unblock.
Mm.
Now, 5% of the time, from the 95% of the time feeling like crap, like it feels amazing, like that little minority time. And that's kind of probably why we do this business, because of that existential high
Of course.
that you can
Right.
receive as being a founder. But anyway, I'll assume that things are going badly in our call. So blunt honesty and feedback. We'll assume that things are going badly whenever we meet. And then the last part of our social contract is, Sharath, you have permission to lose all of our money. And we didn't invest for you to lose money. And in fact, I don't think you're going to lose our money. We invest because we think that we're going to all profit together. But if we uphold our social contract together, we tried really hard. We were transparent and vulnerable and honest with each other along the way. Lots of feedback. All the effort was there, but it still doesn't work out. That's okay. Just come back to us when you're ready to start another company, and we can try it again. And if that one doesn't work out, that's okay. Just come back to us again. We can work it out. Because what I've learned in my life is just that if you treat life like a multi-turn transaction, which it is, a winner will eventually win, right? So sometimes it takes a couple of tries before you get there. So that's the three parts: blunt honesty and feedback. We assume that things are going badly when we meet, and it's okay for you to lose all of our money. So anyway, that's what I say to founders. And the reason why I like saying it to founders is, A, it comes from a very sincere part in our hearts. Like, we believe everything that we just said there. But B, it sort of sets a good tone that we can be safe with each other, right?
Right.
And I didn't feel that way with my investors. I felt like I was trying to please them. It was like having a bunch of Caesars who were just like judging me, right? Like I was in their service. That's not the way that this business should work. Like, if I'm your investor, I'm like any other service provider to you. I'm providing you capital, knowledge, and networks. Like Gusto is providing payroll services. Like First Republic is providing banking services. Like we should all be in your service as a founder. So that's a big reason why I think Hustle Fund exists. It's just like I just felt like it was a really flipped social contract for a long time when I was a founder, and it should be.
I absolutely love what you said. I think I wish many employers and many people are like this. I would say like 100% of the folks who work in tech, just in general in life, are so upfront, because it's a very healthy way of dealing things rather than cupcaking or like really like adding a level of another layer, which is very bad to even handle, right? It would be best to actually have a face-to-face conversation with all the cards on the table instead of hiding the negatives or the trump card or whatever the things that people generally use to uh, behave like in an abusive way. So Eric, that was amazing. I got chills when you said about the last point. I think the first two were kind of well known in the industry. Very few people either, though they practice. But what an amazing way to portray the third point, which is you are open to have an exit. You're giving an exit door. That is phenomenal. Like, because now you're literally lifting the pressure from the founders and giving them all the resources, all the power to go 100x. Because if people have that money as a pressure, like I don't know, but like ton of people, they just fail because they have their what do you call accountable, which is good, but it's sometimes bad as well, right? Like I love the 3 points which you said. I love the exit door more importantly than of course the two are very important. I think in a way you're kind of, you have that service minded leadership or servant leadership that you bring to the table as a VC. how popular is it among the VC industry, in your opinion, and what is something that VC should work on?
Interesting. I think as a stereotype, it's not that common. I mean, there's two ways you could be a VC. All right, one's easier than the other. So version one is this, which I'm convinced more and more is the game that a lot of VCs are playing. Is you and I start a fund. We decide that we're really good fundraisers, and we decide to raise $1 billion out of the gate. What that means is the way that the economics work is we get a $20 million guaranteed management fee, 2% out of that billion, for every year for 10 years, guaranteed. You get 10 million, I get 10 million. So regardless of whether we invest well or don't invest well, you and I are each going to make $100 million. Okay.
Right.
So when you kind of meet an asset gatherer VC, you can kind of sniff it out, right? Like they just don't seem like stressed or rushed in it at all. They're constantly traveling to Davos or whatever bullshit location. Their office is a little bit too nice. I mean, like this one VC I remember talking to just like showed me pictures of all the vacation homes he has around the world in one meeting when I was pitching him. I was like,
what a show off.
Like, just like, like you're not, like you don't give a shit, right?
Right.
That's one version. And I generally find that that's not a very service oriented mindset normally with people like that. And there's plenty of them in this industry. The good news is this, though. The industry is starting to change. There's new emerging managers out there. We're a small fund. There's a lot of other great small funds. And they're, I think, taking a healthier approach to the founders, like in that service mentality, saying like, asking the right questions, like what I can do to unblock you, or if I invest in you, like promising to, help you with your sales or products or designs or all these other kind of permutations of specific areas of value add, I guess. And I mean, like increasingly I'm seeing those folks in the ranks, and it's giving me more optimism. And the way that like smaller funds, just to talk my own book a little bit, get compensated is usually through carry. There's a reason why I'm in my garage and I have a space heater on right next to my feet, is because I can't afford actually a lot for myself. Like, I pay myself a fair wage, which is probably 20% of what I used to make when I was a product manager at Facebook right now. So don't cry for me, because like, I still have a great house and all this stuff, but it's there, but like, it's not, I don't want to get rich off of my salary and management fees. I want to get rich because we invested in a founder, Sharath. We helped him. He got ultra wealthy from his outcome. And then my investors did. And then I got wealthy as a result. Like that for me is like a pure alignment to capitalism. And if that is the goal, which is just like, how do we set up this founder to absolutely like destroy it and crush it, then that usually means you have to do a little bit of work, right? But it's fun. Like it's really fun work. So I'd say that it's a long answer to your simple question, which is just like the industry is changing to be a little bit more service oriented. But at least when I was a founder, it was not. It sucked.
I think that's why you're building a fund, because just like any other founder, or before becoming a founder, someone will work for someone, and they feel terrible when they're working with someone, and they find it very irritating that they go to a point where they want to build their own stuff, solve their own problem, and put it out. I think, to me, that is my biggest motivation. I build things for myself and put it out, because I'll be my first user. Hopefully people join me. That's good. If not, that's fine too, because I'm using my own thing, right? I do this podcast selfishly for me, because I want to learn from the speaker or the guest. If it helps one more person pick brain from Eric, oh wow, that's phenomenal. That's impact right there. So I'm already doing something impactful for myself. I think I love founders, VCs. For example, Ryan Hoover, who I admire so much, Weekend Fund.
Good friend of mine. Yeah.
Ryan does the same thing. He builds things for himself. He does the fund for himself, because he find a kick in it, right? So appreciate people like that. I don't want to ask questions about what you look in a founder, because you create content a lot on Hustle Fund's YouTube channel about like what you look for, founders or startups. That's for that's there. But one thing I really want to ask. You tweeted about this. Being a founder of a VC fund is much easier than being a founder of a startup. Why do you think that?
Yeah, that one actually got a little bit of controversial responses back. I got some pretty
Mm-hmm.
angry direct messages, in fact, from it.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, why
Okay.
do I believe that being a founder of a VC fund is easier than being a founder of a startup? There's so many reasons. I mean, the first I guess I'll ground myself on is product market fit. It turns out that
Mm-hmm.
when you run a venture capital fund, there's very established product market fit. My product is giving money to you as a founder, and it turns out that founders really like getting money from a VC, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, every other startup that I ever ran, like I've had 5 companies. This is my 5th one right now. Like
Mm-hmm.
they it took me like 3 to 5 years to find product market fit, and that was like with a lot of resources spent, time, money, to try to find something that finally took off, and it's just lots of experimentation. So
Mm-hmm.
the early days of being a startup founder, the quest is to see whether there is a path to product market fit, and many do not. I'd say arguably most do not find it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
So you take away that stress. That's part one. Part two is that there's something a little bit different about having a portfolio of companies versus just one company. When you're a founder,
Mm.
all of your eggs are just in that single company. Like it's toxic. Like
Right.
even your personal identity often feels tied to the success of this
Right.
business. That's how I felt. That's never a healthy kind of thing. And I encourage founders not to try to have that mentality too. But it was the case for me. Like all of my money, everything was there. And if it doesn't work out, it's one single thing, right? What that's like
Mm-hmm.
going to be like a binary outcome usually for that founder. In a
Mm.
portfolio, when you're a VC, we have 500 portfolio companies across 3 funds. Like it's never cool when a company winds down or shuts down. Like it never feels good for anyone. But
Absolutely.
from my
Mm-hmm.
perspective, it's sort of okay. And the reason why is VC at the end of the day comes down to just like 3 to 5 companies that you found that you invest in. That generally is going to pull like 90% of the results, right? So it
Mm.
creates a little bit more of like an emotional balance when you're a
Mm-hmm.
VC because you have like a portfolio of high risk businesses, not just the one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think like one of the responses I really liked was from this guy named Frank Rotman. I really like him. He runs QED, which is a great fintech fund in New York. And he's like, yeah, like at the end of the day, though, whether you're a founder of a VC fund or founder of a startup, if you're going to try to be the very best of it, it's always crazy hard. And I think that's actually
Mm.
always true, right? In any discipline, like whether you're a founder or even like working in a day job, like if you're going to try to be like the very best, like within the top 1%, that
Right.
requires crazy good effort. Um,
Right.
so, and being a founder is just of anything. I don't care if you're a VC fund, a startup, or just like, making a cool like e-commerce store for ceramic mugs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just way harder than any other day
Yeah.
job that you can have. Like by an order of magnitude, I would argue.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
not easy, but the degrees of easiness are quite different in my view between VC
Right.
and startup at least.
Hmm. And what lessons have you learned as a founder that you're implementing as a founder of a startup? Are you implementing as a founder of VC fund?
I think the biggest tool is empathy. Like when you're a founder, it's super lonely, right? Like mental
Mm.
health is actually something that is like a serious problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might have a co-founder that you can talk to, and that
Mm-hmm.
helps. And I have 2 great co-founders to sort of talk about these things. You might
Mm-hmm.
have a
Mm-hmm.
great spouse, significant other, friends, but even with a
Sure.
spouse and significant other, unless they're founders too, it's
Mm.
very difficult for them to understand what this life is like, right? So I think the first question I always ask a founder in our portfolio whenever we meet, I go, Sharath, how's your mental health? That's the first question I
Mm.
always ask every single one of our founders, right?
Right.
What I like about that question, it's not like, how are you doing? Which you always gets bullshit response. It's like, good,
Mm.
right? Like people that are fine, or, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how's your mental health is a little bit more of a back foot question where like, you shouldn't be bullshitting me on that one. And
Sure.
I love that our founders are very honest about this. So like, it's really bad
Sure.
right now, or it's excellent, but
Mm.
like, rarely do I hear excellent. So that's part one is like the empathy. And then the
Mm.
part two is just like, because I was an operator for so long and I scaled companies and sold them, like I generally have a perspective that I can share, which is just like, oh, you're about to hire this person. let me talk to them. Like I've hired like so many engineering leads. Like I'm happy to help you close this person. Or if you have to fire someone, I've done a lot of firing too, just like share advice. And first time founders are really nervous about that kind of stuff. Or, digging in on, I was a product manager for a while too. Like, like, let me take a look at like how you're designing these workflows and like, and all that stuff. So there's a little bit of that operating sprinkles I can like put out there. But at the end of the day, like my core job is just making sure that, I'm an asset allocator, right? Like I don't
Right.
get that deep into that kind of stuff, but making sure
Right.
that the founders feel seen and heard, of just, how hard this stuff is, I think is a small, subtle kind of psychological value add that I try to provide too in a very authentic way.
I think an investor is more than someone who gives money. An investor, after listening to your answer, is a coach. It's like literally an NBA basketball coach or an NFL or football coach who have a group of guys or girls, founders who wants to be at their greatness, and the coach's job is to enable that greatness by providing resources, playbooks, plays, or whatever it is. Like you're sharing your experience and being really empathizing with them.
Yeah, but I don't
What
think
are
that's a very
some?
I don't think that's a very consistently agreed on perspective, Sharath, right? Like a
Hmm,
lot of VCs I know don't come in thinking like I'm going to be a coach to this founder, right? Like
what,
I don't think that's as common a use case
what,
as you might think.
why do you think that? Why do you think? And why do you think people are not being a coach when the job itself demands being them as a coach?
Well, because it takes work. I mean, like at the end of the day, like if you're gonna be really cold about it, like if I gave you the money and I'm on your cap table and I have the ownership that I want, then like
Hmm,
that's there forever, right? Like why do I need to help you? I mean, that's a I'm not speaking for myself. I'm
hmm.
speaking like a very like negative like perspective that some people
Sure,
hold,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
and like
Mm-hmm.
and I the downturn has been really interesting for me because there's some VCs that I will not name that have a great brand that have done jack
Hmm.
shit in serving their founders. Like we don't sit on any
Wow.
boards, but like I mean, I see how hard my colleagues Elizabeth and Sheehan they work, and myself too, and
Yeah.
the conversations I'm having and trying to like engineer like all sorts of very interesting financings or like
Right.
trying to fire sale acquisitions for companies that are struggling. And I'm like, this board member who owns like 20% of this company isn't doing anything, right?
Right.
And it's like a constant disappointment in seeing that. And I think the reason why is just like, why work? I'm too busy. It's August. I'm in Europe right
Oh
now,
man.
and I'm just like we're doing your fucking work for you then. So and I felt that way too as a founder. It's just like, man, like these VCs aren't signing up to do anything except for just like sit on cash that
Hmm.
they gave me. Um,
Hmm.
that's a bit of
It
a
almost
rant.
like no. It almost feels like you're describing a bank officer who puts money at an interest rate, and if you don't pay, comes back at you saying that, hey, where is my money? Where is the payment? But it doesn't do help you like your business or the thing you grow. If you're buying a house using that bank loan, they don't come tell you like, hey, these are the things you should avoid when you do a fencing, for example, just for that
Yeah,
analogy. You're describing more of that, which is surprising to me because I think I see people like you, Elizabeth, Ryan. There are like some other folks who are very much intentional and have skin in the game, and they want to help people. That's why they started these funds, not to make money but to like, really like empathize and avoid the problems they faced in the in their past. So
well, yeah, but we're
it's
not saints either. I mean, like at the end of the day, we're capitalists, and we're in this because we think that this is a very lucrative career if you can do it right. So there is a little bit of self interest there. But I'll tell you, like, Sharath, like the thing that I love most about this job. All right,
mm,
outside of working for my teammates, we have 30 people at Hustle Fund, and they're such cool people.
mm,
Um, that's fun, but there's a moment where like when you invest in a founder as like one of the earliest checks, and so many founders at that stage are dealing with like sabotaging voices, imposter syndrome, just like this idea of like trying to fighting back that
mm-hmm,
medulla oblongata response of like you can't do this, like why are you here? You don't deserve the seat at the table. And
mm,
then like on the few cases where like it starts to work and the company's starting to take
mm,
off, you begin to witness the metamorphosis of these founders of like suddenly
mm,
realizing like, I have what it takes to do this. and you see that confidence build, and then you can see like the company just start to grow. And it is an amazing thing to witness when you're at that moment, just like, wow, like I remember when Sharath was like really doubting himself, but he like is like crushing it right now and has exhibited like an amazing amount of growth. Yeah, the money is nice and all that stuff, but like
Sure.
that comes later. Like that's an outcome but
Right.
when you get to see like these good human beings become great at what they do, my gosh, like that's like one of the best gifts.
I think you're also kind of describing the parenting life of being a VC, right? Like if you the joy of your kid taking the first steps would never replace anything, right? Like the joy of that struggle, you treat like your founders as as your kids in a way. After your answer, I love that. I know we are like kind of on time, so I just want to ask about a few more questions.
Yeah,
What do you
sure.
enjoy the most? If you were to give another chance, would you become a founder of a startup or founder of a VC?
I'd say startup. And like,
Okay.
the thing that's really cool is I would do it in a very specific way now. Like if I didn't have this job, it'd be me, maybe another friend. We would
Mm.
leverage a lot of AI and autonomous agents and try to build like a SaaS business to
Mm-hmm.
like $1
Mm-hmm.
million in revenue, bootstrapped with just two people.
Mm.
And I do think we're in that
Mm.
era where you can make like multi-million dollar business with like almost no
Sure.
people. So
Right.
that's probably the place I would go first, is just try to find a problem in SaaS that I can solve, and then build almost like teamless setup to make a decent business.
Mm. Yeah, there are a million people, like so many examples
So
that we
many.
see who are building
It's awesome.
businesses. Yeah, it's good. The more
Mm-hmm.
businesses we see thriving, it's best for the whole industry.
Always.
Uh, for in your opinion, if you were to like give advice for folks who wants to be a VC in their game, what kind of skin in the game that you tell them to like put in? Like they have to angel invest first, then become a manager, then like start their fund. What is like the transition? What is the I would call like what do you call software life cycle type of a thing,
Yeah,
SDLC, but for VC?
that's a great question. So the cool thing is this: there's no real path to becoming a VC because there's an infinite set of paths.
Hmm.
I studied sociology in college. I'm not an engineer.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I somehow found like a very technical career randomly as a product manager and then in my own startups. And
Right.
then the angel investing I started around 2013 really did help. So what I do recommend is something you did suggest, which is beginning with angel investments, even small checks, like $1,000 even, where
Hmm.
sometimes sometimes a lot of angel investors are like, will a founder even take $1,000 from me? And the answer I have for them
Hmm.
is like, yes, they will, if you can also roll up your sleeves a little bit and provide some other value on top of it. Like early in my career, when I had less money, I would actually do like a
Hmm.
small check and advising, saying like, for the next year, I'm going to like do all of your proc requirements or something like that for this, or
Wow.
just something on the side. And that
Right.
ended up being like a very lucrative thing. Probably because I got like super lucky with my first companies. So I think early angel investing, even with small checks, is a great way to learn and then build a
Hmm.
little bit of track record. And if you do want to inflect into becoming a VC, the only difference of how I would have done things differently is probably begin with a nano fund, like go to AngelList, use their AngelList fund
Mm-hmm.
services or rolling fund
Mm-hmm.
services, try to raise like $1 million or 2 million or 5 million maybe.
Hmm.
Um, that's much more doable as like a starting point, and like the costs for running a fund that small have gotten much lower because of great services like AngelList, Sidecar,
Sure.
other kinds of great platforms too.
Hmm.
And then if you're finding that you really enjoy that practice and you can do that as like a side fund as you have your day job or whatever, then
Hmm.
I think that's a good stepping stone into like maybe creating your own VC fund if that's the path. Now breaking into
Hmm.
like an established fund as like a partner or something like that, that's like a Sequoia or something, that's generally much harder. Right? Like
Hmm.
you got to have like unique connections within the industry, pretty great track
Right.
record, or be like a founder with like a pretty massive exit. So
Right.
the entry point there is far harder, and I don't have like as good advice since I've never done it myself, nor do I have I
Hmm.
desired.
Hmm.
But creating your own VC thing, I think is great, and I think we could always use more good funds on the side of the table.
Well, yeah, I love that. I think I manifest myself to be a VC because I have this coaching angle in myself. I always like want to help people. There is a joy, like you said. So 100% hell yes, for that path. Thank you for that. And last, kind of like a last question in a way, you hustle fund invests in hilariously early stage, startups. Can you define hilarious? What is hilarious to you that tickles you?
Yeah, sure. We defined this actually on our website as well. If you go to our FAQ area, but uh, hilarious for me is just like you just quit your job and that's it, right? like you're now like working on this full time. I do want to actually be able to someday support part time founders. I actually think that's pure hilarity.
Mm,
But we're not right now
and
mandated to do that. Like it's for us, like we still need to see the signal. Like this is someone that's not just dreaming, but actually doing it. But if
sure,
you're now full time on the company and then you have like a crappy prototype, that's enough for us, right? Like
right, that commitment.
traction's cool, but like it's not necessary. But you've gone full time and then you tried. You're now trying to build your first thing. I would love to
Mm.
talk to you at that point. Yeah,
I like what you said about investing in part-time founders because I should talk to you about it. I always build these products, and I sold lucky, very fortunate enough to build a SaaS and sold it in the last 2 years.
amazing.
But that's for another topic. But uh, I'm so mad that we don't have more time because I have so freaking many questions I didn't ask.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe we'll do like a round two. But Eric, this has been a blast. I love the mindset, that service oriented leadership that you bring to every founder, all the portfolio you have, and generally general public, like people like me. I learned so much,
No, thank
and
you, man.
I didn't ask about shit posting, but that's for another topic. But I loved your vibe, you're just
Thank
basically
you.
live your life, live in the moment, and be cool about it. So any closing thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, just Sharath, thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast. This service that you're also providing to these questions are great because they invite a lot of vulnerability for
Mm,
folks to understand. I think like some of the underlying motivation a few clicks deeper. Really grateful that you gave me this chance to be on your podcast. And yeah, we can go into round two at another time if people found this first part kind of interesting. And yeah, I think the last thing I'll just mention to any founders who are listening is a reminder of quantity time and quality time. It's very easy
mm,
to view everything as an opportunity cost of like, should I go to this movie with Sharath or can I work like 3 hours instead? And I did this for like so
mm,
many years of just like starting to turn everything into opportunity cost. And
mm,
I got to say that, life moves much faster than you can imagine. And,
right.
you know, I just hope that people can just enjoy the process and journey a little bit more. And
Right.
find some time for slow thinking and taking rest because that's actually ironically going slow allows you to go faster. I'm a really big fan of like high performance driving, and they always say
Mm,
there's a saying which is just like uh, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? So like when
mm,
you're actually learning to drive really quickly, the instructors are actually trying to make you go slower, actually slowing down your
right.
movements, getting your hands a little bit lighter, trying to get a little more smoothness versus like focusing on just like gunning the throttle. And it turns out that
Mm,
like if you do it that way and just sort of adopt that, you end up just going faster and faster and faster with that kind of
right.
stuff. So for me, that also
I
means
love
just
that.
you just don't discount what rest means and actually good pacing, and you'll be
Right.
astounded by how much throughput you can get as a result.
Yeah,
So
I love
yeah,
that. I
but
love
thank
that.
you so much. I mean, it's been such a blast speaking with you, Shroth.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. And that, I think that's the best possible way to end it. I'm so happy that you've said about that quote. I'm taking that as a takeaway, biggest takeaway. But folks, thank you so much for giving your attention. We do this for you, provide value in at least in 1% way, and stay tuned for more episodes. But that's it for today. Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thank you.